welcome everybody to this, in the Netherlands at least, rainy Thursday evening, where we want to do the follow-up webinar to a previous webinar, blockchain and oil and gas, and we want to answer some of the questions that you've had after that webinar. My name is Tom Mullendijks. I'm the founder of SteelTrace. Today I'll be joined with Yannick Dols, CEO of SteelTrace, and he'll be answering some of the questions as well as me. I would like to also make you aware of our YouTube channel. Our previous webinar can be reviewed there. You can watch it back there, and this webinar will also be posted to that channel. Make sure you subscribe, because we'll be posting more videos in the time to come. So if you just search for SteelTrace in YouTube, you will find our channel. Okay, so now I would like to start with the first question, and Yannick?
Yes, we got a question. We have different types of blockchain, and what type of blockchain is basically SteelTrace. So the most known blockchain is, of course, Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is a public blockchain. So basically everybody can be part of the network, and everybody can interact and do transactions. SteelTrace is, on the other hand, not a public blockchain. It's let's say the ledger is publicly available, but the chain itself is private and permission based. This has to do, since we work in a supply chain together with parties, and so only the parties in the supply chain need to be able to participate on one hand, and on the other hand, it is in this way also you have a higher transaction throughput, because with a complete private decentralized blockchain, you have some limitations with the amount of transactions per second that can be processed. So we use a private permission-based blockchain. So that's the answer. If you look, transactions. So we got a lot of questions about, yeah, transactions. You talked a lot about transactions last time, but what is a transaction? Now, we all know the transaction, let's say, in the way of that we do, let's say, a transaction for money. In our bank account, for instance, I send money to Tom, and the transaction gets processed by the bank. Now, in blockchain, the network, so the blockchain itself is the processor basically of this transaction. And a transaction is not only money. So basically all the interactions that you could do. And on our platform, basically every transaction is assigning a transaction. So it's basically the accountability of who is responsible for certain part of the data. So when we talk about SteelTrace with transaction, it's mostly signing transaction, and it's about accountability of data. Yeah, are transactions mined in SteelTrace like transactions in Bitcoin? A very good question. No, our transactions don't get mined. If we look to Bitcoin, yes, and it has to do with the consensus algorithm. So because of the consensus algorithm proof of work, which basically Bitcoin uses, so basically you have these miners, which are basically just normal computers, who put available their computing power to the network and to solve a mathematical equation. And this work is needed because this is the mathematical proof to make the transactions valid, to create the block. And there's also an incentive for that work, because when you have the right answer to this mathematical equation, then you get a block reward. Now, on our blockchain, we work with another consensus algorithm, and that is proof of authority. And proof of authority, they're basically validators in the network, authorities, which process the transactions. And why do we choose for this type of consensus algorithm? That has to do with, one, it's conceptual, more easy to understand. On the other hand, it has a much higher throughput of transactions. So the network does not, let's say, stop and slip because there's too many transactions that need to be processed. And on top of that, it uses a lot of less energy. because with the proof of work, you use a lot of energy to basically compute these mathematical equations, and that's not needed for this. So we use the proof of authority, a consensus algorithm, and this we did for the following reasons: much more transaction throughput, much less energy usage, and we work within, let's say, a supply chain, so a consortium of certain companies. So the full decentralization like you have with Bitcoin is not needed.
All right, this is a question from me. Can SteelTrace interface with ERP system and production databases to automatically populate test results as they become available? I want to answer this question a little bit more broad, because SteelTrace is built, as we call it, API first. API means application programming interface. So everything that you see in the interface, and you saw in the previous webinar already a little preview of what the application does, anything that you see can be done, executed by the API. And so the interface that you see uses actually the same API that you could use to have your ERP system or any other system integrate with. So all the data resources, you can perform CRUD operations: create, read, update, or delete. And that also means that if you already get the test results in your ERP system, it can be very easily automatically put into SteelTrace. The other way around is also true. You can easily extract the data that you own, and you could do things like data analysis on it, or you could fill your ERP system with the data that comes from SteelTrace. Another interesting feature is that SteelTrace has events, meaning, for example, certificate is received. Now this could trigger something in your ERP system saying that, hey, this material has arrived, it's okay, you can start using it now. On the other hand, the supplier could get a trigger, hey, your certificate is accepted, so you can send the last invoice. And all these kind of things can be automatically triggered from the system. Also, the other way around, the transfer of a certificate could also be triggered from your ERP system. So it's just the way you would like to do it. It's a platform and you can integrate with it. So what is the theoretical limit of transactions that SteelTrace can process per second before users start experiencing delays on the validation of transactions? Now, Yannick already touched on what a transaction is. And it doesn't mean that everything you do in SteelTrace is constantly a transaction on the blockchain. The only thing that is a transaction on the blockchain is when you digitally sign a document or you transfer the ownership of a certificate. And our current setup allows for 1,000 transactions per second. So you can calculate how many signatures, digital signatures we can gather per second. But this is not the limit. Eventually we will be able to scale this further if needed. But for now, 1,000 signatures per second seems to be enough for the coming years when SteelTrace scales across the supply chain.
Yeah, and we also got a question how does the onboarding process goes into the platform, and yeah, let's just do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new account for Tom. He will get a different name. I will show you this live on the platform to also show you a little bit about the steps in there. Because in the end, I have to now think I am the admin of the company. So I am the person within the company that is allowed to give rights for signing within the company. And of course, this all needs to be documented in your quality system and your quality manual. So let me go to this one. So here I am in the platform. I'm an admin. I'm an admin of SteelTrace Producer. and I'm going to add somebody as a user. So I go to my admin panel, and I'm going to add a new user. Now I will make the username, we will call him Tom Staal. So that's the name, and we will give him a password also. Fill that in fast. So
it's the same?
yes. And then I have the last name. So, and now I'm going to give Tom signer rights, because Tom will only be allowed as his company to take responsibility for the data he inputs, but he's not allowed to add other persons. So I will give Tom also a face, maybe not needed. You can do that. He can do that himself later. So now we added. So now Tom needs to log in on the application of SteelTrace, which you can download in the App Store or in the Play Store. And he needs to log in with the credentials I just made. When he is going to put in these credentials, then on his phone is a wallet being made for his account, and it will be generated and linked basically to the SteelTrace platform. So that's going to happen. It will take a little while because he needs to create this wallet. He will also get, for safety reasons, a seed to able to recover. So now we will see that we can go to Tom again, and we see we have here the activate button. Because it's very important, I need to activate Tom to be part of, let's say, the company's record and to be able to sign on the blockchain for this company. So I activate this, and as you can see, I, as the admin of the company, need to sign and take the proof that he is allowed to sign for the company. So I'm now linking Tom to the blockchain of SteelTrace combined with the company, in this case, SteelTrace producer.
What we do is basically we create, if we give somebody within the company the admin rights, and he needs to verify that each user that he onboards is qualified to sign these documents. So he needs to make sure that this person has a personal qualification to be able to be a level 3 signer, for example. And by signing this transaction, which Yannick just did, he took responsibility as the admin for that fact. And it is registered in the blockchain that at that point in time, that user has gotten the right to sign. And everything is fully traceable, so you can see which admin gave which user signing rights.
So now Tom is onboarded, and we gave him the rights, and he can now start signing and using the platform. Now you can share the screen, Tom.
Yeah. I go back to our presentation. Okay.
So can SteelTrace see all the data and all the certificates of all the participating entities? If so, how does SteelTrace protect the data? Of course, data protection is very important also for us. So within our company, we have a certain process where only a certain amount of engineers can have the access to certain data sets within the SteelTrace platform. And of course, it could be that they can see part of the data. So yes, some parts within SteelTrace can see the data on one hand. On the other hand, they have no access to the passwords. That's one. And on the other hand, they don't have any access to the wallet or the keys associated, because these everybody is having on their own phone and are linked to that person, and only that person with the account login and the phone and the sign code, this combination can only set up a transaction. On the other hand, at the moment, we're also working on getting our ISO 27001 certification to also ensure you that all our processes are on the highest level to ensure your data protection. So in a nutshell, yes, we can see certain parts of the data, but we cannot alter them, or we cannot sign for you or have access to your passwords. And we're going to get the proper ISO certification to also show you that we are compliant with certain standards.
Is there an intention for the platform to allow inspection reports and pictures to be uploaded and verified? Well, the platform already supports the uploading of files and pictures. We do this for the micrographic examination. You can upload heat graphs from your heat treatment. All those kind of things are already possible in the platform. But this is, of course, a specific question because it adds to the new functionality. On the certificate, we only talk about tests, and we only talk about adding tests and adding laboratories. But as we see it, the inspection reports will be available on the platform, but in a different way than they are made right now. So now each inspector would make their own platform, or make their own report in their own PDF and all that stuff. But we see it more as giving the inspector a certain data set that he needs to look at, and that he can sign off digitally on the platform. That means that it's in real time available for the producing company. So an example of this would be there needs to be a sign off of the company inspector at this point in the production stage before we can move on. Now, we would, when that step in the production chain has been reached, we would notify the inspector. The inspector could go into the platform and see the data that he needs to verify before production can continue. He can directly sign off on the platform, and the production company is immediately notified the fact that this inspector has signed off on it, and they can continue production instantly. So in the scenario of a stockist, how is the certification distributed and ownership transferred to multiple owners of a split or a batch heat? Now that is an interesting question. And I'm going to share my browser. So you can see this is a certificate created by Inoxtec in Italy, and it was done for an order for Total. And as you can see here, a split block is shown. Now, somebody may receive a certificate, and for example, somebody has created 1,000 fittings, and they transfer those 1,000 fittings. So they don't want to make 1,000 different documents. They want to be able to send those 1,000 on quickly, but the trader might only sell 20 at a time. And therefore, the trader can then split the product. He can take a part from the pipe or from the fitting batch and create a new certificate for the quantity that he's going to transfer to the other company. And then a new certificate is created, and it has a block that links to the mother certificate. It shares the history of the mother certificate up until the point that it was splitted. And from then on, it starts to lead its own life. It can be transferred separately to a customer, and maybe this part of the pipe becomes a bend or becomes a fitting, and it starts building up its own history from the point that it was split. Now, in terms of sending batches, we have a tool called the batch transfer, where you can build up an order from all the products you have in your stock, and you can build it up. You can see the status, so you can make sure that it's all good, all tests are available, it's ready to move on. And you can add information that is required for the customer, so that when they receive the certificate, it automatically gets sorted on the right project and on the right line item. And of course, you can select the customer to whom you want to send it. And you can add the order number for the customer. So here you can create a batch of all the stuff you're going to deliver that day and send that in one go to the customer. And I will switch back to the presentation now.
Yes, in the meantime, Lawrence asked a question. How do you manage security of data shared on SteelTrace platform? How will you ensure the reliability of SteelTrace platform from cyber attacks? It's a very good question. It kind of connects with the answer I gave before, but I will elaborate a little bit on it. On the first hand, you need to have all the processes in place to ensure the data privacy and the security. We can do this with, for instance, the ISO 27001. That we are in the process of getting. On the other hand, we are now letting a specialized company test our platform for penetration tests and so on, to really let them already dig into and find, let's say, the small, let's say, entry points where we are vulnerable for, let's say, an attack from cybersecurity. So before it happens, we can close basically these holes. And this is going to be a continuously process. On the other hand, we with our DevOps engineer have a very, let's say, well in place put security parameters on our servers. So it's a combination of one, the processes that needs to be implemented for data privacy and security. On the other hand, continuously testing your own cybersecurity. And on the other hand, having the right infrastructure and setup in place for your servers. So in this way, we ensure the data security and the data privacy of our platform.
Great. Are there any other questions that people would like to ask?
Yeah, for people that don't know, questions are coming up now. Downstairs, there is a Q&A bar, or in the chat, both of you. Mark, now I think this question is for Tom. Mark
Okay.
Walsh asks you, will the platform compile an MBR?
A data manufacturing book. Yeah, eventually we would like to work towards that part of the software, of course, for the of the process where EPCs they get in all the certificates and they need to organize those certificates on a project level. They need to add the welding information and all that stuff. That is on the roadmap of SteelTrace, and we're also talking to another company about a potential partnership on this area. But yeah, definitely this will be part of the future, because eventually the end customer needs to receive a full document, and material is a part of it. But the other part of it is, of course, how did the material get together?
So Tom, we got another, I think. Is this answer enough for you, Mark? Or do you have a counter question to it? Okay, Mark maybe comes back later. And in the meantime, we got a question. Perfect. Okay, thank you, Mark. From Anton. Quality management and data transfer. It's good. What do you plan in the next steps? Partners, certifications, or ecosystem for supply chain data and quality management? What the area and the markets? Tom.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think we are focusing on this vertical of steel now, of course, and that's already a very big vertical to look at. We have a wide range of products that we would need to support. Now it's parts, it's pipes, it's fittings, it's flanges, and all this kind of information. But then when you look at an EPC and what they procure, that goes, of course, further than steel. So it makes sense to eventually go into other directions and to start adding different types of products that these companies procure. So that's one of the things we are definitely working towards. And you can already see that you're expanding then the range of products that you support. In a sense, our system is we have sort of a base system that you can use in any supply chain, any supply chain where you need to register steps, you need to work with external parties to sign off on things. That can be in many supply chains. But the important thing is on top, where you have the interfaces for the specific supply chain. And that requires a lot of knowledge of that supply chain. And therefore we chose to focus on this one supply chain for now, but definitely in the future, we would support more supply chains. That's an answer to your question.
Yeah, on top of that, he asked about trading optimization and how is it related with oil and gas?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so how this is related with oil and gas, we don't plan to go into the trade of oil and gas. That's not something we want to do. But this is related with oil and gas because oil and gas uses a lot of steel for their installations. So oil and gas and steel are very linked together because everything that is used in to get the oil from the ground, to transport the oil, to do the chemical processes on the oil. It's all done in steel constructions. And so this is the part of the steel market that we focus on. And the reason is that the steel has a lot of, this market is extremely important that the steel is exactly what people say it is. And that goes a little bit less for other parts of the steel market.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Then Lawrence comes back. Is there an intention to club SteelTrace unique part number with digital twin solutions?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Lawrence. Thank you for that. That's definitely a part of our roadmap. So it's something that we're talking to other end customers about now already, is because eventually everybody wants to have this digital counterpart of their factory. And of course, SteelTrace has a lot of information that can feed the digital counterpart of that factory. And now all those things are in huge folders stored somewhere in containers, and finding something back after a couple of years. Okay, this part, what was it made of? Who made of? All that kind of information is difficult. And if you have this structured database with which you can find anything in an instance of your factory, we think that can be very, very valuable. So yes, definitely we would like to feed into digital twin solutions that are out there.
Yes, and that was all the questions for now, or does somebody now has a question in the meantime? Yeah, feel free, you can always type it in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for now, that were the questions. Feel always free. You can email Tom, for instance, at tom@steeltrace.eu, or myself, Yannick at steeltrace.eu. If anytime later, any questions sink in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another question is, what are the ways to get started with SteelTrace? And that's, of course, a great question. So there are a couple of ways you can get started with SteelTrace. You can get in touch with us. As of the 30th of May, we will be launching our free version, where you can sign up directly on the website, and this free version allows you to send and receive certificates. You cannot do anything else. You cannot create certificates or work with laboratories in this version. It allows you to participate and receive certificates. So that's one way. The other way is that you can do a kickoff project with SteelTrace, and we've done this with a lot of companies already, among them Total and Vallourec, SEW, you name it. A lot of these companies have done kickoff projects with us. And that sort of shows you how the platform works, how you can integrate it into your systems, into your workflow, and it's sort of the runner-up to actually start using the software. And of course, the other way is just to sign up, and we can onboard you on the platform, and you can start creating certificates, adding specifications, and all this kind of all this good stuff, which will make your processes a lot easier.
So, thank you, Tom. In the meantime, Gino came still with a question. Regarding digital twins, are there negotiations ongoing with engineering tool suppliers like SmartPlant?
Not yet, not at this moment. We are kind of guided by the tools that the end customers that we work with today want to use for this. And that's the first companies we will engage with.
So I think, Gino, to answer your question, not yet,
but
it
thank
can
you
be
for this tip. And yeah.
And we will go after it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me see. Maybe another question came in. Okay, Gino got the answer. Okay, great. That were the questions for now.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I want to thank you all for listening to us. Thank you very much for joining again, and all your great questions. And I'm sure you'll have a lot more. Feel free to contact me or Yannick. So it's Yannick at SteelTrace.eu or Tom at SteelTrace.eu. And we want to do this bi-weekly. So we plan another one for the 14th of May. And yeah, this one will be a little bit different format. We want to go into discussion with people from the industry and to look at the problems that they run into that we think that SteelTrace can solve. So yeah, thank you very much. And I hope you guys will join us again next time.
Thanks.